To date, I've made 20 videos about living with RSI. I have many more planned, but they are understandably hard to set up, get the lighting right, and so on. However, I have come across a resource which has an incredibly large number of tips about living with RSI, the RSI and Overuse Injury Association, at rsi.org.au. My best guess is that this is the aggregated life tips from a huge number of individuals with RSI and chronic wrist pain, which gives them a very wide view into many activities. On the Living with RSI page, it gives a lot of general tips, including the 70% rule as a guide for staying within limits. When you hover the mouse over Living with RSI, you see a long list of categories. Each one has a list of tips and some personal anecdotes about them. To complement these, there is a section of help sheets, which have some overlap with the various sections, but also their own information. For example, their section on reading and TV briefly mentions book holders, and then they have a help sheet entirely about book holders, detailing ones they recommend and where to buy them, including mentioning the gimbal one I covered in my book holder video. They don't list all of their help sheets immediately online, asking that you become an email subscriber to see the remaining ones. The rest of this video is a small selection of their advice which I found particularly interesting or innovative. In the driving tips, they recommend having your hands at 5 and 7 instead of 10 and 2, so you can rest them on your legs. The associated help sheet even mentions a steering knob instead of a wheel, although that may only be available in certain countries, and that there are further innovations like a foot-activated handbrake, car door openers, and recommends automatic cars and dash-mounted gear changes. For laundry, they recommend large, sturdy pegs, and even a special washing line which requires no pegs. There's advice about changing the types of handles you have around the home, including taps. There's advice about devices to help with taking medication, including ones for popping the pills out of the packets. They reviewed 5 different brake software for prompting you to take breaks when typing at the computer. Of these, I'd only ever used Workrave. For computing without the mouse, they mention an add-on for Dragon called Caster, which gives superior mouse movement control, and I'm going to have to check out. And they highlight the Google Chrome add-on Vimium, which lets you browse the internet without using the mouse at all. In the main reading section, they recommend breaking the spines of your books, which means you can lay them flat and the pages won't spring back together, negating the need for a book holder, and highlights that library and second-hand books will be on the way to this, so it's better to avoid brand new books. There's a simple tip that using the rubber on the end of a pencil can help with separating pages. In the section on gardening, while highlighting various tools that could help, it highlights that garden shops generally have no idea what might be best for your condition, so if they are pushing a product they happen to stock, you should raise an eyebrow. In the topic of general housework, it recommends swapping new clothes pegs with old ones from your friends, as the spring is weaker in the old ones. And has a good tip about pouring liquids by putting the receptacle in the sink and resting the kettle or jug against the work surface as you tilt it, meaning you don't have to carefully hold the weight of it as you pour. The housework section has a lot of tips about drinking and eating as well. And a key tip for when hosting: give up trying to impress, lower your standards. They have some good personal care tips such as easy-to-wear clothing, and, if you feel able to, cutting your hair shorter so there's less of it to manage. They have a 31-page book about pregnancy and parenting with RSI, and many anecdotes on their main page about it. This includes simple things like paying for a cleaner so that you are in less pain with the baby and therefore more patient with them. Reusable nappies are more environmental, but they are also a lot of handwork, so they are better left to the non-RSI sufferers of the world. Baby slings and carriers are really useful, as are feeding support cushions, and it's possible to have a modified cot which opens from the middle with a foot-operated mechanism. And if only one parent has RSI, it's reassuring to know that the child will learn and accept that parent's limitations as normal. There are a variety of ideas for alternative ways around writing, such as swapping letter writing with recording an audio tape. or even calling the recipient. There are several pages about computing by voice, mostly about Dragon, including highlighting that you need to do more proofreading, as every recognized word will be spelled correctly, so you check for errors in meaning instead of spelling. They have advice about being wary of overusing your voice, detailing how you should drink room temperature water before and during such work. Note that the first page on computing by voice also links to multiple pages of advice about emotional health. I've only given you a very surface view of what this website contains, as it takes a few hours to read everything that they have, but this will definitely have something for every person with RSI or chronic pain in the upper limbs.